welcome everybody to second day of the conference at Gothenburg Botanic Garden. We've called it Advanced Training. Thank you everybody for coming. We've got a lot of small questions, or bigger questions, complex questions, and mix of everything that people sent us prior to the conference. We will try to answer some of these. Some of these have already been answered at other sessions, so we'll go through them anyway. Are there anybody here who are feel like they are quite new with Iris, but they don't feel like they needed to do the introduction training? Yeah, that's not to be ashamed of. That's fine, because normally when we do this is typically something we will use for people who are quite new to Iris, but they've already done the introduction training. So what I thought we would do is to first start with some examples of Iris with just some more complex accessioning examples, so that you get, as some of you who haven't used Iris a lot, get that kind of a feeling of the fundamentals, and then we move on to the questions and topics that people asked, and then we obviously can have questions coming through the day as well. So we're starting now, and we'll have a coffee break at around 11, and then we will finish off at quarter to 1. So yeah, that's I don't know if this is a quote that I had here from before, so anyway, that's what Iris is all about, I suppose, or any collection management software, trying to find a way to capture the chaos, and if you can do that successfully, that's up to you and the software. So this is the agenda we have for this type of session. So what I'm going to do is go through an example of where we accession some plant material, and then we will do some more advanced stuff with nomenclature, splitting and merging taxa and that kind of things that some of you may not have done or may not be familiar with. And then we go over to more of the other questions, and then we have some alternative things here at the end as well, if we don't fill up the program. Yeah. These are, I think we can just go straight to demo. Yeah. So, everybody's seen Iris, obviously. One tip for those who are may not know about it is to use this one to go in full screen mode, so that you use your whole screen real estate. You don't see Facebook and stuff coming and just take your focus, so you can be completely focused on the workflow. And obviously you all know the navigation stuff, so I'm not going to go through that. So what I'm going to do is to just record a new accession and have a bit more data than you normally have, or maybe not, but so obviously you clear the screen, as you know, and you start accessioning. And if I say we have an Acer Arguten, or let's do this one, it's a better example. You all know that this is an alphabetic list of all your taxa in the garden. But you should also, or all your names, let's say, but you also may or may not know that it's a combination of synonyms and accepted names. And here, if I now pick, if you got plant material from a garden or from the other part where they've used another name that you use, let's say you have us, you know that they use the synonym of Arguten. I'm not sure what the synonym would be, but. And if you don't find the name they used here, let's take that as an example. Let's go straight to an example where they use the synonym of this one, and I want to capture that. So you know, they've used another name, I want to log that in my system. What I can do then is to go into the taxon screen. Did I click? Yeah. I have a Wi-Fi that's a bit flaky, maybe. I don't know. Shouldn't be. Okay, so I want to then add that synonym here, so that I can capture that we received it with that synonym. I'm going to find that synonym now by just using Catalog Life. It wouldn't typically be on the label that you received from that garden, but I'm just praying that the Wi-Fi works. Yes. So let's say we had this one. I'm just going to copy that and create the synonym. So I just add here and then Acer, and then I very much believe in and copy and paste in these cases. So now I've added the synonym. I can also, while I'm here, I already went to, I did the web search. I used Catalog of Life, and this is another tip. Catalog of Life is one of many web resources, but what's nice here is that you then here get what they think is the accepted name. So now we already checked the name, and then we can go back, and you see here now the author is Maxim here, and we can double check again and whether that's the right. So that's almost the same writing. I'm not sure if you want to correct that or not, but what you can do now is to also use this one, the IPNI button. Are you familiar with that? Are anybody seen that?
Yes.
Yeah, everybody's familiar with that. So International Plant Name Index. The difference here it's quite important to understand the difference between something like Catalog Life, which will give you details about the nomenclature, what is considered to be accepted names and what is not. International Plant Name Index is a spell check. It will have all the published names, but it won't give any decision about what is considered to be accepted names and what is not to be. So when you use the spell checker, IPNI, you click here. In this case, I only get one name, so that's good. But sometimes you get several. And then the question is, which one shall I pick? Well, it's often then better to figure out which one you should pick before you click. But you can click again and change. But so if you go to a resource like Catalog Life, here you have at least one authority about what would be considered the accepted name. There are others out there. So I don't know, have anybody an opinion about these web resources, which one they prefer and which one they rely on, and which one they think is really great and which one they think is really...
The one I use is, where possible, the world checklist.
The world checklist, yeah.
Selected plants, but it's selective.
Yeah, exactly, it's selective, yeah.
I think we recently had in some meeting we had a look at this, and there it turned out that either the Catalog of Life or another Catalog of Life.
The plant list is
no, not the plant list. There are two of these, Catalog of Life and then Encyclopedia of Life. Yeah, exactly. These two. One of these two was actually better than using either plant list or WCSP, because WCSP is not complete and the plant list is not
it's not being maintained. Yeah.
So this was actually quite good, and I think there's also something where it where it works together with what ICN Red List is using. So there were some of these things.
This is used by the Red List by the way. So it's published. They come with new for refresh constantly. So
I do use the plant list, but always go and check their sources.
Okay.
The sources can actually contradict what they're saying, but they're actually a good way of actually going back to find sources. It's always good.
Yep. Okay. So what I've done, what I did now, I sort of selected this, and then Iris will then pull out. You see here some details like publication information down here, and I can do the same with the and most of you know, but I'll mention it anyway. You see now I've selected the top line. If I now go to the other line, I get details about this name, and I can do the same for that name. And that is not found in IPNI. Does that mean that it's wrong? Maybe not. I mean, there are often, it's like a reverse thing. If it's there, you have spelled it right, most likely. There are some spelling mistakes in IPNI, but there are few and far between. But the other way around, there are some names that are not there. But I don't know. This.
I usually prefer the spelling and also authors from a curated checklist over IPNI. So in this case, I would probably use Maxim X Nick.
Okay.
Instead of Maxim or Abutu.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll do it like this for now. So now if so this is the key here. I can obviously carry on. This is what you typically do. You get new plant material, you check the name, you check the nomenclature, you go in here and you see if you have, and this is a bit what I suppose we talked about yesterday, right? Policy, record keeping policy. So you have some ideas about, and I think I mentioned that yesterday as well. It's more a question of sometimes what you shouldn't record, and have a clear idea of why you should record whatever you record. You know, maybe you say we should always fill in life form, and maybe always also try to do distribution, check the IUCN ranking, things like that. But it's a very good idea to. It's not. It's almost like it should be compulsory to have an institutionalized idea about what you record, and how do you decide on what to record? Well, you should look at your collection policy and see, do you have one? No, okay. Maybe then should get one, so that you all people using the system have a very sort of clear mindset on why you record the stuff you record. Yeah. That makes it much easier. And we've seen when we do data transfers as well, we see all the flavors. I mean, some people have filled in all the fields, but then only on the small data set, and there doesn't seem to be any sort of, you just had some very eager staff members who really wanted to record all kinds of things, like all the leaves on the tree kind of thing. And yeah, that might not be the way to spend your energy. So go back to so if I select this synonym here, and that, now this is a little trick in that it didn't.
Can I jump back?
Yeah.
That's a good general question. Do many people, when you're doing your names, create a reference to go with that?
Oh, good point, very good point. Yeah.
Because we kind of always make sure we put a reference to say where that information's come from.
Very good.
But I don't know whether everybody else does that.
No.
Okay.
So what I did, thank you. I was, thank you. So what I did was, of course, I did a catalog live search. So I could here click the blue button, so Iris will remember the last web search you did, and add that to my references here already. And then you get a second question. If you have Garden Explorer, or even if you don't, you should really use this as an idea. The ranking here, you decide if this link is of importance or not for public. Maybe this is something that normal visitors won't care about. So I will decide, in this case it is. We will hide it by ranking it as number 10. And since we're here, we can just see if Wikipedia has a nice article about this. Yes, they do. So maybe we want, that's another institutional discussion, you might say. Instead of us curating a lot of details about our collection, there are, Wikipedia is doing quite a good job. So it's you might as well consider, this is up to you obviously, but if you did that, you could just go here and add that one and say then that will become an option on Garden Explorer for visitors to just get more details about that species. Going back here, I can also, under names here, say you have name source. I can type in here catalog of life as well.
I just
So
use
it's
the check date, check reference. I use that right there, just because
Yeah.
it's on the front page.
There's so many places.
Yeah,
There
this.
seems to be lots of places for it.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's actually the best place because that relates to the names to the name status, but it goes to your library, so it's often a bit difficult to. You have to then put the catalog of life in your library.
Oh yes, this is
I
true.
find it a bit.
That's very true. Yeah.
so here you
So
go.
many circles before you're there, so I ended up not using it.
Mm.
There's also a minor distinction that the name source is for each individual name, whereas this one is for the whole taxon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you put anything in the comments down right,
Yeah.
it will be overwritten when you click on a new source in the name or a new reference for the name. So it's not a good place to put your own comments in.
Yeah, I'm not sure it will be overwritten if you have anything there.
Yes.
Yes, it is
Okay,
overwritten.
yeah, then it's a good point. So what you can say is if you already fetched IPNI data, then you can write comments there unless somebody foolishly click IPNI again.
Yes. And
So,
then
yeah.
you
Okay.
also put,
Foolishly, I shouldn't have said that. But yeah.
and in common names, I usually put the source in the comments.
Yeah. Okay, maybe we should put in a common name as well. Since we're here, I realize. So again, I can now see if they have some cool common names here. Yes, we have. Pointed leaf maple. I'm going to put that in. And then with this falls back to some questions earlier today, or that we received prior, label printing and all that. How many of you print common names on your labels? Yeah, exactly. So, very important part of the daily routine. As you know, or you may or may not know, that you can obviously record names, common names in different languages. Or you can also, if you have, depending on your garden, I know, for example, some gardens might have a medicinal garden, and you want to distinguish between common medicinal names
Yes.
versus common English names. So it's nothing to be ashamed of to split this up, like we've done here, but making a distinction between English and medicinal names. Because then you can also use that for specific labels and pull the medicinal name out instead of the English one. And yeah, so there are many ways to solve the needs you have. So if I do English in this case, and then like that, and this is then ranking here becomes very important, because when you design labels, you can refer to, there are different types of mail merge fields. One is the common name default, which will pick the common name that is ranked as number 1. So keep an eye on that, and if you rank several common names as 1, they will just be lined up with a comma in between them, and that will typically often fill up your label space. So I can follow Gerda's tip here and say Wikipedia.
But rank 1 is set automatically when you save.
Sorry?
Rank
Oh, if I don't do anything, I think it will be 2 actually.
no,
So
it's
let's-
one in this case.
Okay, it's one. Yeah. So if I put in another one now, so this is a Japanese one. So we'll just say for the sake of it. Sorry. And then that will then. And now you're thinking, oh, I have 2 ranked as 1. That doesn't sound like a good idea. But obviously, not obviously, but these are 2 different languages again. So you have one label, so template name so that's English default. So you get the one for each language. But there's one called common name default all, which will pick the the common name ranked as 1 for the language that you've marked as the default language, which then will, in this case, most likely be English.
What I do is I just rank 1 for the thing I want to have on the label, and all the rest is 2 or whatever. And then it doesn't matter which language I choose.
No, but I'll show, maybe I should just show you that, because if you've set it up, I'm just going to select this. Hold on, I'm just going to remember the name. Sorry, I'm just going to show people that part. This is the one I want later, Diabolicum. I'm just going to go down to code lists here so you can see this. Homonym types. This one is now marked as default here. If you don't have any marked default, or then you won't be able to, so this is a very important part of your setup. If you want to, presumably, I assume you want to have, you have one. You only want to have one language on your labels.
Well, that's what I'm saying. That's not how I've designed it. So I have no default language.
Yeah.
And per species, I decide which language I want to use as default. And normally it's Dutch. But if there's no Dutch name, or if the plant is planted in a Japanese context, sometimes I use Japanese names with Japanese signs and everything. So then I'm more flexible. So I decide per.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's an alternative approach, and you can do that. So that's yeah. Cool.
When you do that default setting, if you've got multiple collections, does that default apply across?
Yeah.
All
Yeah. This
in the same way that taxonomy is shared across.
Yeah. All this is for all the sites.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So going back to our example, so now I added the synonym, and I can then type here. You see, I typed AC space DI, so it searched for the first part of the different components of the names, and then here is the name I put in, where you then see that the accepted name is now on the right hand side, Acer Arguten. So now I managed to capture that distinction, that you received it as, or it here technically says identified as, or determined as Acer Diabolicum subspecies Arguten, but that's the accepted name in your collection. And that question comes up, you're in charge of what you define as accepted. And some people ask, do we manage, can we help? I mean, you have to sort this out yourself. And but you now saw that all these web resources. There is quite a good thread on the forum. About this particular web search list that you have here. There's a number of tips about different web resources you can put in and change. So I won't go into more details about that. But if you have any suggestions to add to that list, then please share it with the community. So I can just mention that while we're talking about web search, you can see here that how some web pages are not possible to include the web search directly. What it needs to have is what is called the capability to do what is called query strings. This is a bit techie, but I mentioned it. Some of you understand this straight away. Some of it find it a bit techie, but you see here, this Catalog Life allows you to search in the URL with names. So if you come across this resource and you see that they actually generate these kind of query strings, then it will integrate with Iris. If they don't, you could still add it as a web search and then bring up the search page and complete the search yourself, just to make it a bit easier. But yeah. Okay. So now I have I've done this. I've checked my taxonomy. I've added the source. I've done ITNI, etc. And then maybe I'm a bit uncertain about if it is really this. So I can add a determination type as well to say there's a and then we can go to a wild collected material. So let's say this was wild collected, and we have some details about that.
Can I have a comment here?
Yeah.
Can you remove that CF?
Yes, very good question. So this is something that most users ask at least once, and sometimes several times, which is fine. So the way to clear the content of a field, it's Control Delete.
Well, I'm asking that because for various reasons, I have to use my Mac laptop and connect to a Windows computer over the web.
Then you can use function control backspace.
Hey, we should have prizes for the answer of the day.
that depends on the Microsoft remote, whatever it's called, program, remote desktop.
Yeah.
And there are various versions of it, so it may or may not work.
You can try a different combination. But
Yeah, just get your cat to walk over the keyboard until it works. Well, I mean, send in the question, because we obviously have a Mac to figure it out. I mean, there is an answer to these things, but it's sometimes a bit difficult to get to that answer.
It's not very obvious, though. But couldn't it be possible to actually have a blank choice then?
Yeah, that is.
Now you have two.
Yeah, you could. Yeah, some of these lists you could. Well, I would advise. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for spotting that. So we carry on with. Okay, so thank you for input there. Then we can record the collector. In this case, Mr. Pete Atkinson. And I suppose most of you, or all of you, know these self-populated lists. So the ones, you see that recycle button here on the right, that is an indicator that it's a list that grows as you use the system. And if you don't find what you're looking for, you can always then just type in what you want anyway. And then this will then be added. Yeah. And now this option will then be available the next time. Collection date. This thing is irritating. And
Can I ask you a question relating to this?
Yeah.
If we got an expedition.
Yeah.
So in my case, the Kew, Edinburgh, Cambridge expedition to Vietnam. So we have a title for the expedition.
Oh yeah.
And then we also have and then we have a long list of collectors. So we got 5 or 10 collectors attached to that expedition. How would you store that?
Very good question, and that goes to one of the questions that came in prior to the conference.
Yeah.
And I'm just saving this now, and I'm just going to fill in wild. So one method, that one question is. Well, I'll reply to yours, and that will reply to the other one.
Yeah.
Quite a few gardens use projects for this particular purpose, to record a collection trip. So, project is something that was introduced in IRIS many years ago, and it sort of has been superseded to a certain extent by custom attributes and by tasks who can do a lot of what project did in the beginning. But it is for collection trips. It's a very, very appropriate sort of use. So we're going to create a new project here, the big China journey, the ping pong expedition. Oh, that's the project code. So. And then here you can obviously describe and write things, starting in the 1st of April 20. Oh, that didn't like it. Yeah, so hold on, 4/19, and we're going to be there until August.
So I'm the responsible person. You can only put one person in.
Yeah, and that's a staff member.
Yeah. So if I've got a list of people who are on the ping pong expedition,
then you would either put it in the comments or in the description.
Can you not put it in the, go back to the original screen, I thought you could add it to multiple names.
You can have multiple names there,
Yeah, yeah.
obviously.
yeah. But we've also got a ping pong expedition name as well.
I thought we'd done that.
That have
Sure, we've
both.
done that at work.
I've come up with a bodge way of doing it. But
Yeah.
I've not used this.
But you might have some material collected by those two and some by those two, but they're same expedition, I suppose, as well. So this gives you at least more refinement in that respect. So if I now go back to my session, and I can then here get in my ping pong. Yeah.
So a similar question for Indexaminum. If you have an expedition going to somewhere collecting seeds for Indexaminum, can you do the link this project to your seed list as well?
Yeah, on the stock items, you have you don't have the project as an entity. However, if you accession the material, you
Yeah, but we usually don't.
no, then the project part isn't available here.
Is that possible?
Yes. Everything is possible.
Okay,
I have a question about coordinates. Usually, I don't know, guys, how many precision you must have on what how decimals on this latitude and longitude. And it would be nice to be rounded automatically if it's possible, because usually on all this GPS navigator we have 5 decimals, but usually we don't really do 3 or something, just to be round, because it would be less text.
well, if you round it, you technically move the point. You know, it's
Yeah, I understand.
so it's not necessarily a good. And normally you won't type it. Normally you would have some tool to generate it anyway. So yeah.
If it takes up too much real estate on your label, and one way of doing it is
Oh yes, the label question.
Changing when you export it for label printing and stuff, to round it off in your sheets or whatever.
Okay. Yeah.
Or, I don't know.
You could round it. It depends if you're going if you're bringing it in via, say, an Excel spreadsheet, you can round it in Excel before you bring it in as well.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
But it was mostly because of the length.
Yes.
The buffer. Yeah, so yeah, if you export to your label printing, I would just round it off then before you print and keep the full decimals in your database.
It's a bit scary if the software rounded it, because you may want the precision. so yeah.
Precision changes along.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
I have a question as well. So we have added our collection and so on as contacts right now.
Where as contact?
As
Oh
contacts,
yeah.
But now if you feel like, oh, it's much better to have them as contacts, is
Yeah.
there an easy way to move data from the contact field and to the product field?
Yeah, sort of. What you can do at least is to do the search advanced or search for all the ones that have the contact, and then use update multiple. So you can then update them all and assign that project to all of those in one operation.
Can I also then delete the contact?
Not in the update screen. No.
But can I delete? So because I have another example when we have comments, for example, item comments,
Yeah.
but we realize that they should be accession comments. And is there any? Can I then move the item comments to the accession comments and then at the same time delete them from the item comments?
Yeah. So the what I would suppose I should do there is that you can obviously use data import.
Exactly. But then
It's tricky with the item, because you also have an item history, so you probably have that comment multiple times. Okay, let's.
Det är en sån
Det vet jag heller, eller han sa att den står för
Let's move on to so just to recap. We just recorded one accession, and that took us a long time. And hopefully you're a bit more efficient in your own.
I only do one job.
Yeah. So one a day. Yeah, that's probably smart if you have, nobody knows what you're doing. That you just keep the tempo low, so that you. Anyway. So what we're going to do now is to. I have some extra topics if we run out of ideas here. I want to do something about. Maybe I'll start with that and then go on to the questions. The how to manage nomenclature. We talked a bit about it already, but one thing that is important to be familiar with is how to split and merge taxa, because that is sometimes required. It's not very difficult, but some people may not realize that it's possible. And so if I just bring up, I want to bring up a name. Yeah, he's moving along. I'm just do go advanced search here, and then search for. I want to search for a taxa that has some plants. Just for the example, I'm going to go through here, and we do this one. So here we have a name, Napellus, and we see here under references that we have 9 accessions and 6 plants. And what can happen is, of course, that this name is no longer an accepted name. Suddenly we'll be told that a Napellus is now a synonym of another aconitum. We'll make up something here, so this is not a true story. And that's when this function here, expire. I'm going to go full screen again. So the expire function, which has 2 purposes. It's either when you have this particular scenario, when this accepted name now has become a synonym of something else. It's also the same function you use when you find that you've made a spelling mistake. So you have 2 taxa that are supposed to be the same. So one has made a Napellas or something. So when you click expire,
But you're on the wrong. No, sorry.
That's a good point. I mean, when I use expire, it goes for the whole taxon. So it doesn't really matter which of the names I've picked here. Then it doesn't matter. It's a good point, because that was called delete in the old days. Nobody clicked it, as we now have talked about earlier. So if I click expire, you will see now that if you had misspelled it and you want to just basically move those accessions over to the correctly spelled one, you would just use the delete. But now in this case, we're going to treat it as a synonym. And then it's like a coctum is now the accepted name. Again, this is fictitious. And when you do this now, you will suddenly see that all the details came over, the common names were copied, and the references are the same because there were no names. We didn't have any accessions on the other one, so that was kind of nice. Sometimes it becomes a bit messy when you, anyway, if you go to make these changes and you have a lot of plants related to this, I would advise you to first create a task of those, because you probably want to print a new label. It's a bit more tricky if you now merge and suddenly you had 49 accessions, and figuring out which one changed the name and which one didn't. So be a bit sort of clear-headed, or think about that before you make those changes, because then you can do the label. You can probably create a label request before you make the change. Yeah.
Would that still be visible in the field where it was originally determined as?
Yes, that's exactly.
Search for that one anyway.
Yeah. So now Yeah, you can do that. That's a very good point. You can search for what it was originally determined as, so you will find them. But easier still to plan ahead. And this is one thing that's very important to comprehend with how taxonomy versus plant identification, the difference. Nobody's looked at these plants and made a decision whether it's one name or the other. If I go now to these accessions, you see here now, it's called Lycococtum, but it was identified as Napellus. And the identification history down here is still the same. I mean, nobody has gone and looked at the plant and said it's Napellus. Yeah. And sometimes when there's more, sometimes you might want to go and re-identify, I don't know, depends on the text, the name and this, yeah. Yes?
Could you show us how to turn this process back when they turn out to be
sort of
different species after all?
Yep. Yeah, exactly. Now the researchers have said, oops, we disagree again. We now want to say that Napellus now has become an accepted name again. That happened 3 years later, for one reason or another. Then you can go down here. So you see now, if I select one of the synonyms, I get this little blue here, that blue button there, which will say transfer. And then you get all those combinations that are natural. You can either create a new taxon, or you can merge it to another taxon and make it the accepted name of that taxon, or you can use it as a synonym for an existing taxon. So all the necessary combinations. It's not very difficult to do. It's just knowing that you can do it makes a big difference already.
So will you bring along you won't bring along any accessions then?
Exactly, and that's the really tricky part. When you do this one and you had like 50 accessions and you split it, then you should probably send somebody out and look at the plants to decide whether they are part of the one taxon or the other, because depending on that's a bit different topic, but it's important to realize that might then be needed. What happens with so if I do this now, say I create a new taxon. Now it didn't disappear, just became a new taxon. But here we still have those because we can't decide what was the right answer here. So now you should go in and have a look and make. So they're now Lycococtum. And interestingly enough, we had a determination history of Napellus, etc. So, okay. So that's the
Yes, but in theory, if it had been that at one point, those are probably the ones going back. So it is in history. So you could still search those history. I mean, you still have a way of finding what used to be called that.
Yeah.
Whether they're right or not, but at least you could still get that data set back.
Yeah. Yeah. But there's no auto magic.
No. You'd have to go in and rechange. So then do you have to go into each one and rechange the taxon name?
Yeah.
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 So
you need to go here and then make a change
on each one.
And on each.
Yeah.
Well, no, you can actually.
Bulk.
Good point. You can do a bulk update. So we have those 7 here now. I can select them and then do update multiple. And then let's do that. Voila. This is, of course, something you should. Here, read these messages, okay?
No, she doesn't ring you up and say.
You should put in some sort of like when you write what do they do when they send in some manuscripts? They write some really crazy stuff at the end to make sure people read it, so they comment on what the hell did you put there. We should put something here so people complain, so we make sure they read it. So now,
can I ask, will there ever be the opportunities to do updates multiples with the items tab as well?
Well, that's item manager in a way, but it only does specific things. It doesn't do everything.
Yeah, because sometimes you just want to update a particular field.
Yeah. So So the answer there, I suppose, is the workaround at this point anyway, is then the data import. To do, if you want to do a bulk update on items or other things, that isn't sort of offered in the system. But just going back now, and then if I now, of course, pick it up again. Now it's 0. Yeah. Anyway, there was a question.
Yes, this is for taxonomists or admin permission.
Who can do
Who can do this? The taxonomist.
Yeah, anybody who has to use the expire function, you need, I believe, you need delete access level on the taxon. To do the update multiple, I may think, I can't 100%, but if you can't do it, check, because there's also what called, this is under management, no, sorry, under authorization role types. Let's say the botanist here, he or she, if you scroll down to the taxon screen,